Hi, and welcome to Power Play. I'm Mike Lecouteur. Tonight, border recruitment blitz.
Making communities safer is a top priority for Canada's new government. We promised Canadians we would act decisively, and we're delivering.
Another day, another pre-budget announcement. Today, the federal government promised more than $500 million to hire 1,000 more border guards. Is it really needed, or is this a result of pressure from President Trump? We'll ask the Secretary of State for Combating Crime, Ruby Sahota. Then, Pierre Poilievre takes on the RCMP. Why is the Conservative leader questioning the integrity of Canada's national police force? We'll dig into that with our front bench. Sabrina Grover, Melanie Barazzi, Carl Boulanger, and Abigail Meaden. Plus, British Columbia demands faster help for the forestry sector. The province says its lumber tariffs from the U.S. have hit like a buzzsaw, and the industry needs help. What kind of help? We'll ask BC's forestry minister in just moments. But first, beefing up the border as a way of protecting Canada's sovereignty. Now, that is the pitch from the federal government as it announced the fulfillment of an election campaign promise to hire 1,000 more border guards. Now, the full counting is supposed to come in the November 4th budget, but we did see some of the numbers today. The plan includes $617 million over 5 years to train, hire, and deploy those new officers. It's all part of the Liberals' promise to crack down on the illegal trafficking of drugs and illegal guns and cars across our border. Now, this announcement first came in June, so will the government finally follow through on the promise? Ruby Sahota is the Secretary of State for Combating Crime, and she joins us right now. Thanks for being here, Ms. Sahota.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me on.
So the federal government has talked about protecting our border, but really that only started to be the narrative since it was identified as a problem by U.S. President Donald Trump. So is today's announcement about appeasing the American president?
Absolutely not, Mike. That is something that we definitely undertook under the previous government, started doing work. But in our platform in the election, we had made a commitment to Canadians because for a long time now, we have seen for the past several years that we've had an increase in violent crime in our communities using guns, illegal guns that are smuggled across the border. We are having a fentanyl issue here in Canada as well. I've visited many communities where it's devastating to see the aftermath and the effects, and the numbers are growing, Mike. So we need to do something, and America's issue is, a minor part that probably triggered some of the movement on this months and months ago. But our platform commitment that was made in our platform and will be in our budget is a suite of different measures that we're taking to crack down on crime. That includes the bill that we brought for Stronger Borders Act. It includes our hate crime legislation. It's going to include the bail reform and sentencing, and also the RCMP personnel and CBSA that you heard announced today.
So with respect then, why has it taken so long? I mean, this was something that your government or your party campaigned on in the election 6 months ago, but at the same time, this was announced in some form back in June. It's been 4 months. Why are we only hearing the details now?
It hasn't been long at all. We haven't had a budget where the financing for this can flow. We are a new government that just took office in May. So I think I would argue that we're working quite expeditiously to be able to deliver on our platform promises. We're delivering those in our budget. And the very first piece, or the second piece of legislation, but one of the first that we introduced in the House of Commons was our Stronger Borders Act. That was C2. And so I would say that this has been a priority of our government, and we've been moving very quickly on the issue because it is a top priority of ours.
But with respect, you don't need a budget to introduce something that has new spending measures. I mean, the governments do it all the time. If this was so much of a priority, why didn't you move on it in June when this was first announced?
We have been putting systems in place. The CBSA is aware about our recruiting that we need to do. So there has been a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes. The Prime Minister is obviously coming out and communicating some of the work that has started taking place and that will continue to do. You don't hire 1,000 CBSA personnel or RCMP personnel overnight, so this work will take some time. But to be able to get the resources to even do the hiring, that takes some planning and effort. So I would argue 4 months is not a long time. In the grand scheme of things are moving very, very quickly. And it was important for the Prime Minister to announce and foreshadow some of the things that have been done and what we can expect in the budget coming forward, because these are concerns that Canadians have. And as a government, we owe it to them to communicate what we're doing to tackle these issues. And so that is exactly why the Prime Minister went out there to make this announcement, so that Canadians know the work that is being done behind the scenes.
I don't think anyone can argue that it does take time to make sure you're finding the right people, training them as well. So what can you tell to Canadians today about when they can see these agents on the actual front lines?
Yeah, so those are assessments that are being made right now, and I think what we're trying to do is make sure that each group of recruits that comes out is larger than the group before, so that we can have a cascading effect and get to the 1,000 new personnel as quickly as possible. Even I'm in Alberta right now, and we just wrapped up the federal, provincial, territorial meeting with all the other justice and public safety ministers. It is something that all provinces are bringing up because they all have issues of organized crime, selling drugs that are often smuggled across the border, and guns in their communities. And so we're trying to work in partnership with everyone as quickly as possible and we do have a lot of applications. And so CBSA has a lot of good candidates to consider right now. And so we're trying to do it as quickly as possible, Mike, but I wouldn't be able to give you an exact timeline. All that I could say is that our goal is to make sure that we're graduating and training more and more officers, and we're more attractive to people that want to apply for the CBSA by providing better finances while they're training, because that often is an obstacle for people that are later into their career. It's difficult to make the switch when you have a family and other obligations and finances that you need to meet. So we need to make sure that the training stipend is one that is attractive, and so we can get the best recruits as well. So all of this is important because we don't just want to increase the number, we want to get highly qualified professionals to do the job.
Yeah, and I understand that, providing any sort of exact date would be difficult, but surely the government has a timeline. You said yourself at the beginning of this interview that this is a major concern for the government. So by what date would you want to make sure that they're in place so that you can feel like you can tell Canadians that the problem not necessarily is solved, but is certainly addressed? The government must have some metrics.
Well, the funding that's been announced that you just showed at the beginning of your show is over a 5-year period, and so we'd like to see, almost a doubling and an increase in recruits each year, so that we can meet that mark and spend that money over the course of that time. It's not just about new recruits too; they also have to have the resources in place so that they can do their job effectively. So that money is all important in attracting, giving them the proper compensation, also the tools, and then having the officers. So once again, Mike, I'd have to say that it's really, really hard to give you exact timelines, but we are committed. This announcement is a serious announcement. Like I said, it's a suite of different announcements that we've been making and different measures that we've been taking to make sure that we're fighting crime at all fronts, whether it's at our borders or in our communities. And often what happens at our border, as Canadians, we know ends up on our streets. And so that's why it is so important to me in my role, working with Minister Ananda Sangri, Minister Sean Fraser, and of course the Prime Minister and all of Cabinet to address the concerns that Canadians have and to deliver on a timely manner, but to also do it in a proper fashion as well. So this will be a project that takes some time, but the wheels are in motion, and we are working as fast as we can to get those roles filled.
In some of those details, the national president of the Customs and Immigration Union, which represents the border guards, said that he's worried that all 1,000 hires will not be frontline border guards. What can you say about the breakdown of the hires, and can you assure the union that these will be people who will be on the front lines?
Well, there's a lot of different roles that CBSA officers fill, and just like the RCMP that was announced yesterday, there was, some indication given that about 150 officers would be working in the financial crimes unit. There's a whole bunch of different units in the RCMP, as there are in CBSA. So whether they are officers that you see at a border entry or officers that are working behind the scene, I think all roles are very important when it comes to making sure that our borders are secure. So I think all jobs within the CBSA are going to be important to be able to meet our goals. So I'd love to come back, Mike, with some of those details. Those are all going to be ironed out in the coming weeks. And after the budget is unveiled, we'll be able to really get down to work and be able to break down all those numbers. And I'm sure we'd be able to provide them to you soon.
Yeah, and we'll certainly take that opportunity. Just before I let you go, the union has continually said that there's a shortage of between 2,000 and 3,000 officers right now. What does this announcement do to address that issue?
Well, it fills a gap that is needed, but
how much of a gap, I guess, is the question? Because if you're hiring 1,000, are we still going to be 2,000, another 1,000 short if their estimates are on here?
Well, what our commitment is to go above and beyond the capacity that we currently are supposed to have. These 1,000 officers are supposed to be above and beyond the number that we ought to have today. And so the vacancies that need to be filled will be filled, and these 1,000 officers or personnel are a commitment above and beyond that.
So you're saying you'll fill the 2,000 to 3,000 spaces that are currently empty and add 1,000? I'm just trying to figure out the math here.
Well, I'd have to go back to take a look at those numbers, because that's a larger number than what I have been ever told. So I would take a look at that. If that is something that he has said, I'm sure it's coming from somewhere, but that's not a number that I've been provided by public safety. So I'll definitely sit down with CBSA and take a look at what the vacancies look like. But that number is a lot larger than anything that I've heard.
So I'm curious what that number that you have heard is then. If the union is saying between 2,000 and 3,000, according to the government, what's the shortfall right now, or what is the gap?
Well, I've heard much smaller numbers in different ports and different entries, but nothing remotely close to that number, Mike. So I'll love to sit down with the union and discuss that with them. I'm sure the public safety minister would as well, and so we can make sure that the roles that need to be filled in order to meet the demands of the crime and the issues that we're seeing these days and the border concerns that we're seeing, that the right roles are filled. And so sometimes these numbers can be misleading, but I mean, I'm not saying that anyone is trying to mislead anybody, but sometimes the vacancies that have been left are not ones that need to be refilled, and maybe others need to be filled. So it really, really depends. And so I'd love to come back and give you a more in-depth view of the places and the positions and maybe the departments that we'll be looking at filling.
And you are always welcome on the show, so we will take you up on that offer at your next soonest convenience. Secretary of State for Combating Crime, Ruby Sahota, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mike, and I appreciate you having me on here from Alberta. I did want to just say that the Federal Provincial Territorial Meeting on Justice and Crime was a very successful one. We just concluded today, and there was a lot of consensus around the table. I believe that all the provinces and territories and the federal government are really prioritizing these issues and are all steering and heading in the same direction. And so it's been one of the most cooperative and consensus-building meetings that everyone has said that they've had for a long time. So I'm looking forward, even on this issue, working with our provincial partners and territories to make sure that their needs are filled through this onboarding of new CBSA officers so that we can make sure that the issues that they're dealing with in their communities can be prevented at the border.
Okay, I appreciate that additional information. We'll talk to you soon. Still ahead on
Thank
this
you.
show, our
Bye.
front bench will discuss why Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is going after Canada's national police force. Today, we have Sabrina Grover, Melanie Paradis, Carl Boulanger, and Abigail Beeman. First, though, BC says its lumber industry isn't getting as much attention from the federal government as other sectors, even though it's being hit hard by U.S. tariffs. What more does the province want from Ottawa? We'll ask BC Forestry Minister Ravi Kumar right after this.
Because Ottawa is in Ontario, because it's beside Quebec, those provinces are often front of mind. And so my anxiety as a British Columbian, as a Western Premier, is that we have to be way more aggressive to make sure that we get our message heard.
We start from a position where we have a better deal than any other country in the world with the United States. But we're also very acutely aware and very focused on the fact that we can make it better. And so we will do everything we can to make it better. There's times to hit back and there's times to talk, and right now is the time to talk.
It's safe to say it's been a tough week for British Columbia's lumber industry. On Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump slapped an additional 10% tariff on softwood lumber. The BC Lumber Trade Council says now the total import taxes on softwood lumber are over 45%. The American administration also put a 25% tariff on unupholstered wooden products, cabinets, and vanities. Now, the Premier, David Eby, is calling for more federal attention on the issue. What more does the province want for its lumber industry? Ravi Parmar is British Columbia's Minister of Forests, and he joins us right now. Thanks so much for being here.
No, always a pleasure, Mike. Thanks very much for having me.
So you've spoken about the concern at the lack of speed of getting supports to your forestry industry. How urgently do the mills need this support?
No, we're desperate. We are dealing with 45% duties. I would add Canfor, one of the major operators, not just in British Columbia, but in Canada, is dealing with 57% duties and tariffs. And so we are seeing curtailments and closures imminently. I would just add that Interfor announced today that it was curtailing its operations in the Adams Lake Division in Chase, British Columbia, in the interior for 2 weeks. And so we need the federal government to step up. I'm really pleased that they are moving forward with their loan guarantee program, but it shouldn't take this long from announcing a program in August to rolling it out. We need them to respond quickly. And I think, as you said, and as the Premier eloquently said, we need the federal government to step up. We don't want to pit workers against workers. Auto workers matter, steel workers matter, but forestry workers matter just as much, and we're not getting that love from Ottawa.
Industry Minister Melanie Joly this week did say that $1.25 billion support package will be made available. You've also said in the past that BC's share should be between 40 and 50%. Why do you think BC should be getting that much of the pie?
Well, I would say, Mike, that for forestry in British Columbia, forestry is our auto sector. Forestry is our steel sector. We are the second largest exporter of softwood lumber in the entire world. When it comes to forestry, we are the economic engine of Canada. And so we absolutely need our fair share, and we deserve our fair share. 50,000 direct jobs, over 100,000 indirect jobs, forestry-dependent communities are all on the line. And there is no sector that has felt the weight more than forestry, I would add, from Donald Trump's tariffs. We have 35% duties, an additional 10% duties. There are more duties and tariffs on Canadian lumber heading down south to the United States than there is on Russian lumber. It's absolutely absurd. We don't acknowledge the premise of Donald Trump's actions at all, but we need the federal government to help us out. Workers' livelihoods, their paychecks are on the line.
I understand you're looking for that aid from the federal government. I'm also wondering what your province has provided for the sector, because I think some people in the federal government might sit back and say it can't just all be on them.
Without a doubt. Look, we often joke as Canadians that we're polite. I feel like British Columbians are extra polite. I don't wake up in the morning thinking, man, what am I going to say to Ottawa to slam them? I would say that I've been very complimentary of the leadership style of the Prime Minister, in particular his Minister, Tim Hodson, who's been an outstanding natural resources minister for me to be able to work with. We've stepped up. We've delayed timber pricing for a couple of months to be able to help build up that liquidity. We've provided hundreds of millions of dollars in grants to be able to support value-added operations, to be able to get more fiber use out of our fiber, to be able to increase the value of those products. We're also diversifying. We just announced this week that we're opening an office in the UK as an example. So there's a whole host of things that the province of British Columbia has been doing. But let's also remember, Mike, that the Trump tariffs and all of these challenges that we've been dealing with over the past number of months, this is not new to forestry. We have been dealing with this for decades. And so to be able to have 45% duties and tariffs for most operators in Canada is a big challenge. And again, we remain optimistic that the federal government can land a long-term softwood lumber deal, but it is not confident for us when we hear them talk about landing a deal for steel, aluminum, and energy, and for them not to mention auto lumber. And it's why we're raising the alarm bells and encouraging them to come to British Columbia, talk to our workers, and assure them that they're going to fight for their paychecks and their livelihood alongside us.
Yeah, and I take your point on that, and I also take your point on opening that new office in the UK. But according to the latest year-to-date stats from your department, 78% of your softwood lumber goes to the US. Well, 89% of your panel wood also goes south. So how much more work does your province have to do to truly diversify your lumber industry away from the United States? And how much have you done up until this point if those stats really don't bear out the fact that you're still reliant on the US?
Clearly not enough, Mike. We have to do a lot more. We are too reliant on the United States and our forest sector. And I know that we're not alone. We have often talked about how British Columbia is the most well-positioned out of all of the major provinces to be able to withstand the challenges facing us when it relates to tariffs and duties on other products, and especially those that are CUSMA compliant. But I would argue that British Columbia has been doing a lot these last number of years to be able to expand our market reach. I'm heading to Japan next month, but it's challenging without a doubt. I was engaging with some folks in Europe not too long ago, talking about how that's a market that's very important for us. And they shared with us that industry was shipping a lot to the UK prior to 2006 when we reached our last softwood lumber deal. But as soon as we reached that deal and those duties were eliminated, we dropped those markets. And so for me, in the long term, there's short-term challenges that we have to deal with to ensure that we have a softwood lumber forestry sector that we can be proud of and that we can ensure is creating good paying jobs. But in the long term, I never want to put workers in this position ever again. And that means diversifying. That means opening up more markets in Japan and South Korea, in Europe, in Australia, in India, and China, and all of these other places, because we have world-class wood products. We're the second largest exporter of softwood lumber in the world. We believe we can go global.
On Tuesday, Premier Eby spoke about an ad campaign that your government is getting ready to launch in the United States. What is that going to look like, and what do you hope to accomplish with it?
Well, look, we're taking our message directly to Americans, and it's two messages really that we're going to be focusing on, and it's going to be starting off in Washington, and we're going to be looking to Washington, D.C., and looking to expand it over the weeks ahead. But two things. How absolutely absurd is it that there are more duties and tariffs on Canadian lumber heading down south be able to build middle-class homes for Americans than there is Russian lumber? So it's Donald Trump essentially saying that he would much rather deal with Putin and Russia and take their lumber than Canadian lumber. That's the message that we think Americans should know, in particular lawmakers. And the second message is we're joining the U.S. Home Builders Association and so many others that are calling out Donald Trump for the actions that he's taking, not just to hurt forestry workers in Canada, to see mills fire up in Russia and mills curtail and close here in Canada and in British Columbia, but also the tax that he's putting on middle-class Americans who are simply trying to build homes and in many cases rebuild homes. I was in California just weeks after the fires that occurred there. It's a very important market for us. There are many middle-class Americans who simply can't rebuild their homes in California from fires simply because of the actions the president is taking to drive up the cost of housing. There is an absolute collapse in U.S. housing demand. We're seeing mills curtail and close here in Canada, but also in the United States as well. And that is because of the actions of the president. And we're going to take that message directly to Americans.
Do you have a launch date for that ad?
hoping to have it next week. We're working very hard to be able to roll it out, and I think it's going to be very complementary to the work that I know many of my other colleagues are doing in other sectors right across the country to be able to take this message directly to Americans. We want to continue to provide world-class wood products, and we're excited about what we've done and what we can do in the future as well.
Well, I can say you're more than welcome to debut it here on Power Play next week, so we'll extend the invitation to you to come back next week.
I look forward to it. Thanks very much.
BC's Minister of Forests, Ravi Parmar, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate that. To other news now, it was another high-stakes meeting at the White House today where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy sat down with U.S. President Donald Trump.
It's not easy for us to give. You're talking about massive numbers of very powerful weapons. So that's one of the things we'll be talking about. Hopefully they won't need it. Hopefully we'll be able to get the war over with without thinking about tomahawks.
The United States has tomahawks and other missiles, very strong missiles, but they can have our thousands of drones. That's why where we can work together, where we can strengthen American production.
Now, this was their fourth face-to-face meeting this year, and it comes just a day after the U.S. president spoke at length with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump has said he's planning an in-person meeting with the Russian leader in Hungary to discuss ways to broker an end to the war in Ukraine. And Zelenskyy spoke to the media after leaving the White House. Have a listen.
I know the topic, one of the topics what we discussed with President Trump was about security guarantees. We want United States be a part of security. We count on the leadership of the United States. We spoke about it. And we spoke our conversation about air defense is very important. You know, when drones attacks, it's useful to speak. It's difficult.
Are you more or less optimistic that you are going to get those tomahawks?
I'm realistic.
Coming up, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre takes aim at the RCMP, accusing the institution of covering up scandals under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We'll dig into that with our front bench, Sabrina Grover, Milton Langer, and Abigail Beeman. They're all here, and they'll be here after a short break.
Don't take any orders from any political individual. And as far as his comment with regards to senior management, I would invite Mr. Poilievre to meet with us and to meet with the people who run this great organization, 32,000 strong.
That was RCMP Commissioner Mike Duhem yesterday, responding to criticism from Pierre Poilievre. Now, in a recent interview, the Conservative leader alleged the RCMP have been covering up scandals under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Now, Poilievre claims those cases would have led to criminal charges and specifically references the SNC Lavalin affair. If you forgot what it was, well, that was the Trudeau government being accused of political interference in an ongoing criminal case against the Quebec-based construction company. Now, yesterday, Poilievre was asked if he thinks his criticism is appropriate and if he'll take up Commissioner Duhem's offers to meet.
Yes and yes. Obviously, Justin Trudeau violated Section 121 of the Criminal Code when he accepted a $250,000 vacation from someone who had asked for him to give a $10 million government grant. The RCMP's own documents revealed that there were grounds to believe that fraud had happened. And yet, even though he broke the criminal code, the Mounties, the brass of the RCMP said that they could not, quote, productively pursue an investigation. If the RCMP commissioner is now saying that he wants to open that investigation, we're prepared to hand over all the evidence of Mr. Trudeau's criminal code violations.
So why is Poilievre raising this issue again years later? Is there a political calculation? Let's ask the front bench. Sabrina Grover was a federal Liberal candidate in the 2021 election. She's senior advisor at North Star Public Affairs. Melanie Paradis is a former communications director to Erin O'Toole. She's now president of Texture Communications. Former interim NDP national director Carl Belanger is here. He is now the president of Traction Strategies. And we also have CTV national news correspondent Abigail Beeman. Thank you all for being here. And Abigail, you've been working on this story all day long. What has the reaction been?
What struck me, Mike, so far covering this story was how hard it has been to get a Conservative who wants to speak on the record, on camera about this. I don't think I've had so many rejections to interview requests than this one. Behind the scenes, you know, it's a different story, and there are obviously different camps, different reactions. But a political hand grenade is one of the on background comments that I got from is someone who wasn't able to go on camera about that. So there are some who believe that the opposition leader has gone too far in these comments, specifically about invoking the idea of jail, and some who believe that is veering too close to U.S.-style politics. Whereas Liberals on the other side have been publicly condemning these comments, right. and that comparison to Trump, they feel has served them well before. So they're happy to talk about this story and quick to jump on that angle, but sort of mixed reactions among the Conservatives that I've spoken to in terms of why and how and what he has been saying. Yeah, and Mel, I have a feeling you'll agree that it is some mixed reaction to it. So I guess the question, sort of playing off of what Abigail said, why bring out this political grenade right now?
So I've been racking my brain to try to think about what the strategy was here, and there doesn't always have to be a strategy behind things sometimes. Conservatives are really good at fighting the last war. We hold grudges like you just can't believe. And this interview was really a greatest hits replay of all of the things that upset the base the most. So we had like the 2016 Aga Khan Island, that was 10 years ago. The 2019 SNC-Lavalin scandal 6 years ago. Then the comments about the RCMP were really about the leadership under Brenda Lucki, who resigned in 2023, 2 years ago. These are all things that happened. They're worth mentioning, I think, but none of them made anybody stop voting Liberal. Most Canadians have memory hold Justin Trudeau. All they care about is when he is cited on a yacht with Katy Perry now. And so I would just like to urge Conservatives to please stop talking about Justin Trudeau, because every time you do, all you are doing is contrasting him with Mark Carney, and it does not help Conservatives at all.
Yeah, and I hesitated making this panel about why former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was wearing jeans on a yacht. But that, I think, is going to take a whole hour, and maybe it's, Power Play After Dark. That is a show suggestion that I have that I have to talk to people at CTV about. But Sabrina, it feels like this is a gift to the Liberals when there are so many other things to hold them to account on.
Maybe Pierre should call the RCMP for a wellness check, or maybe the Conservative Party should call the RCMP for a wellness check on Pierre. This is so far from being relevant or something that people are talking about. It is almost a bizarre break with reality. Is he actually okay? The only possible thing I can think about that is getting this, this line of topic or this line of thinking back on track is is he afraid of the leadership review in January? Is he trying to reactivate a base that maybe is flowing away from him? Is he trying to, pick that fight that didn't even exist in the last election with Justin Trudeau to secure that leadership? That is the only possible angle that I can see for Pierre going down this path, because otherwise it is irrelevant. It doesn't attack a budget that's coming in 2 weeks that you would really think that they would be spending their whole entire, media cycle on. It's just confusing.
Yeah, and Carl, to Sabrina's point, where he did it, how he's doing it, and why he's doing it. And it all kind of starts to point in a direction of, does he worry that there's a part of the base that he's starting to lose and he needs to sort of get excited about to come out to that leadership convention and to make sure that he has a big number? Do you think that that's the indication here?
Could be, but to me, just he was amongst friends that believe the same stuff he believes in. So he said those things. He let his guard down. I don't know if we have come here and said the same thing to you. But he did it because he was comfortable, and they believe that stuff, and he believes that stuff, and so they all talk to each other.
But that's a flank to go out on. I mean, that's a ledge that you put yourself out on.
Yeah.
You know, and you say you're comfortable. I mean, that doesn't come up normally.
It shouldn't. You know, it's years ago. People have moved on. He's not running again.
I mean, Justin Trudeau has moved on, as Mel has also, you know, clearly laid out.
I think the problem is that it reminded Canadians one of the reasons why they voted for Mark Carney, which is they were afraid that this guy was a mini Donald Trump, using the same kind of tactics, the same kind of language, the same kind of rhetoric, and now he wants, like Donald Trump, to put his political opponents in jail. And he's calling the police a liberal police. That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's working for him. Maybe it is. Maybe it is for that leadership review. But in the long run, I don't think it's going to help reassure Canadians of why, you know, they were concerned about him in the first place. I don't think Canadians are seeing this and saying, oh, wow, he's changed. Well, no, he hasn't changed. It's the same guy.
If I may, I think worth pointing out to Carl's point that if that was a message for the base on that in that YouTube channel, in that interview, what really stood out to me today was the clip that you played when he was asked again for a second time in a broader context. He didn't back down. You know, he doubled down instead. Yeah.
Yeah. Mel, what do you think? Do you think that play here is looking at the leadership race and saying, I got to make sure I have the votes that I think I have?
There definitely is a segment of the party that is still does not understand how we continuously lost to Justin Trudeau, and that despite all of these scandals, despite SNC-Lavalin, Aga Khan, blackface in 2019, like in the middle of the election, how we still managed to lose, that didn't stop people from voting Liberal. There's definitely a segment of the base that just doesn't understand, and they're still angry about it. And so I do think that speaking to that segment of the base is perhaps the strategy here.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Unfortunately, like a former prime minister, we have to sail on from this topic. We're going to take a quick break. I think Abigail and Carl got it. With the front bench, we'll be right back after this. We're going to talk about the diplomatic trade tightrope that the Carney government has embarked on. We'll be right back.
I'll note that Minister Anand was in India. She had some very positive engagement, but she also outlined Canada's concern with respect to previous incidents, and our expectation is that we will continue to and cautiously rebuild the relationship with India while ensuring the safety, security of Canadians at all points.
That was Public Safety Minister Gary Anandasangari today defending the Foreign Affairs Minister, who has been in both India and China. Now, Anita Anand has been meeting with her counterparts in those countries as Canada attempts to advance bilateral relations following a bit of an icy period. Now, that chill came after China illegally jailed the two Michaels in response to Canada detaining the CFO of Huawei, and the RCMP saying that agents of India's government were behind the killing of a Sikh activist on Canadian soil. All this comes as Canada attempts to diversify trade away from the U.S. as that trade war continues to drag on. So, what's the strategy behind the move? Well, before we bring the front bench back, let's have a listen to Anita Anand, who did speak to reporters earlier this week.
The relationship between our countries is one that we are taking step by step. I have stressed the importance of the security dialogue, the law enforcement dialogue between our two countries in every conversation, and in particular stressed that there is an independent RCMP investigation continuing.
All right, let's bring them back in. Sabrina Grover, Melanie Paradis, Carl Boulanger, and Abigail Beeman. Sabrina, I think people might look at this and go, the toughest job in this government right now might be Anita Anand, who is trying to walk this tightrope. How and why do you think the government is trying to do this now, other than the fact that, yes, they're trying to diversify trade away from the U.S., but I mean, this is a difficult needle to thread.
think it is, but it also reflects this idea that like geopolitics is not a singular line, a singular straight line. Geopolitics is always evolving, and we always have to be thinking about our partners in the current context, not even in a context of last week, right? And I think that that's what this government and Minister Anand are trying to do. We have a fierce, large stomping elephant on the south of our border. And we can't make retaliatory tariffs or make these big changes or make these big swifts without potentially experiencing a disproportionate response back, whether that's lining up troops at our border. Like, we don't know what he would do, right? And so I think that this is an important aspect for Anand and Mark Carney to be going out to China, going out to India, who realistically are the biggest trading partners that we are going to have to negotiate with. We can do as much as we can with Europe, and I know that the team has been in Europe, they've been in the UK, they've negotiated those deals, but without China and India on that same fence, we're not going to have a successful, diversified trade market. So I applaud her for going out and making those deals while still being able to kind of thread that needle on communications when it comes to the RCMP investigation as it relates to both China and India.
Yeah, and how difficult is that, Melanie, especially when you consider even earlier this week, when asked specifically about the comments on CTV's question period from the Chinese ambassador to Canada about the removal of tariffs and what it would take to get those canola tariffs removed. And he said, look, just remove the EV ones. And even Mark Carney had said, it's not that simple. It's not like you open one door to China and that doesn't affect the other door to the United States and simply, as a matter of fact, things that are happening in this country. So, is it as simple as what Sabrina is saying there and that we have to continue to have these conversations? Or is it really that we have to have the conversations and sort of be secretive about what we're saying so that we don't, have the guy in the Oval Office look and go, well, wait a second, that's not what I wanted to hear from you?
Look, I think this is all part of like a complicated negotiation strategy, both with the Americans and the Europeans and with those in India and in China. I think that it's smart to keep cards close to your chest and to talk to all of the different parties and try to move the needle with each of them. And then ultimately we'll see where things shake out with the Americans. That's going to have a big amount of influence on what our relationship can be like with China and with India as well. But I think domestically, in my mind, the most important thing that we need to continue to reflect on is foreign interference and the role that both of these governments have played in allegedly disrupting Canadian elections, and the role that they may have played in foreign interference there. I think that a lot of Canadians have probably forgotten already about foreign interference. It was like the top news story for 2 years, and now that the inquiry is over, no one's really talking about it anymore. But it would be a big mistake for the government to get complacent on that with either China or India. It's something that they definitely need to keep top of mind when negotiating and continuing to build these trade relationships.
But Carl, what's the danger in further deepening those trade relations and then being concerned about foreign interference the more you get integrated with China and India?
Well, the danger is that more things come out about foreign interference, and that this government now looks bad, trying to cozy up to a government that's interfering with Canadian politics. But this is the funny thing about politics, right? Like, 1 year you have this set of principles, and the next year you have this set of principles, right? And it's political expediency. That's what's happening. And this is happening, and you mentioned it in your intro, because of Donald Trump. He's forcing this government to go that route. And I'm not sure that if it was not for the trade war, that this conversation would happen at that kind of level, at that kind of pace. But they are happening because of that reason, because they need, the Canadian government needs to show Canadians that they're doing something to try to mitigate the damage that are being caused by our American partner.
Yeah, and Abigail, at the same time, we're not getting too cozy to China, because then Donald Trump may say, well, hey, look, the calculation that I have here, or if we say, yeah, we'll remove tariffs, then that affects our trade with the U.S., right?
Well, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I'll be watching is when the Prime Minister will be meeting with senior Chinese leadership. Like we saw that meeting with Anand in China today. And the Prime Minister has signaled that will be coming soon. The Prime Minister's office just made his next big trip public to Singapore and Malaysia and South Korea. And there's the idea floating around that he could meet with senior Chinese leadership on the edges of a summit there. So I think that's something to watch going forward.
Yeah, and that APEC summit, summit will be key, Sabrina, because that is what we're hearing, that he could likely have that meeting with Xi Jinping on the sidelines, as Abigail said, of the APEC summit in South Korea. How key is that meeting and even the sort of optics coming out of it?
So I think that one of the things that's going to be key for that meeting that the government hadn't really done for the meeting with Donald Trump is setting expectations in Canada with Canadians and with the premiers. The biggest problem with the negotiations that we're having with China is a lot of these industries are being pitted against each other, and within Canada, that means regions are being pit against each other. So if he's going to go to the APEC summit, he needs to make sure that he understands how that's going to play in Canada between Alberta, Ontario, Saskatchewan, when it comes down to either a deal on canola, a deal on EVs, whatever it might be. That conversation in Canada has to be set, and the expectations have to be set different than they were for the White House meeting.
Yeah, and Melanie, making sure that, as Sabrina said, that he doesn't look like he's pitting different provinces and industries in different provinces against each other.
Yes, you can't pit them against each other, but you also need to maintain Canadian values. And one of the key values that I hope that he remembers and keeps top of mind is that it was just a few years ago that Canadian Parliament declared that, or recognized that the treatment of Uyghur Muslims in China is a genocide. And we need to make sure that as our trade relationship with China evolves, that it is not going to include any trade with a region that is treating people as slaves, slave labor in their shops.
Last 20 seconds, Carl, on that, especially when you consider that these are the competing interests.
They are the competing interests, but also cost of living is going up, and cars are going to be more expensive. And China have a lot of cheap cars. Yeah. So the consumer pressure is going to come on against the pressure of Doug Ford and Premier Doug Ford and the auto industry in Canada, or the other workers who are worried about what's happening, because, at some point, you have to decide which winners are you picking. Is it going to be the Canadian consumers, or is it going to be just one industry? And at that time, Mark Carney is going to have a difficult choice to make.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about that on Power Play after... I'm kidding. We don't have that. Sabrina Grover, Melanie Paradis, Carl Boulanger, and Abigail Beeman, thank you so much for being on here. Trust me, I'm going to lobby our bosses for that show. In the meantime, we're going to take one more commercial break. We'll be right back after this. And that is your Power Play Week in Politics. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us. I'm Mike Lecouteur, Vashi Kapelos. We'll be right back here on Monday. Until then, have yourselves a great weekend and stay tuned because your top headlines are just ahead.